start out with a quote as Ryan Remus actually used a moviegoer part, because I also use a moviegoer quote. The idea of the search comes to me again as I am on my way to my aunt's house, riding the Gentilly bus down to Elysian Fields. The truth is I dislike cars. I have the feeling I've become invisible. People in the street cannot see you. They only watch your rear fender until you're out of their way. So this excerpt's called People in the Street Cannot See You. And I was actually on the bus for 2 days, and I stayed in a hotel in Kissimmee, which was not the highlight of the trip. When I was going to Winter Park High School in the mid-'70s, I used to skip school and go fishing. I just read Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. I was inspired by their mischief and sense of adventure. Toward the end of high school, I skipped school a couple of times and took the bus from Winter Park to downtown Orlando. There was more retail activity at the time. I wandered into Crest department store, had lunch at McCrory Drugstore's Fountain Shop, walking the empty railroad tracks, looking at old buildings, many of them gone now. I felt like a modern-day hobo or beatnik, even though my knowledge of these worlds was pretty limited, peripheral, and my mother was going to cook me dinner in a few hours. About 20 years later, during my daily commutes riding the Seattle bus, I read The Moviegoer. Not only did the protagonist, Bink's existential search resonate with me, but I also understood what he meant about riding in the bus and driving. I know that my current perspective of the bus is pretty privileged and maybe nostalgic. I drive most everywhere these days. The bus and mass transit is a topic that can get pretty heated. Many times people involved in the discussion have very little first-hand knowledge of the bus. And I'm guilty of, and I tend to romanticize all travels that are not too organized. The meandering journeys of the beats, the hobos, the situationists, Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, and other explorers who are not necessarily destination-oriented are my inspiration. I look forward to viewing the less traveled roads and the uncelebrated, ignored places. It feels much more like an adventure when there's no branded anecdotes or travel logs to reference. That morning on November 11th, I took the bus 45 from Lake Mary, where I'm house sitting. At the Seminole Center super stop, I switched buses to the 102. Tagging the stop super seems ironic. It's bleak, bare bones, stop at the edge of a Walmart parking lot. Heading south on US 1792 on the way to the Winter Park Amtrak station, we passed many ugly, often unoccupied strip malls and plazas. I know this is no secret. They're all over. The schedule said that I needed to switch from the 102 to the 103 next to the High Life on time. I think it's called something else now, some cheesy thing like the Event Place, not the High Life on time. I looked at the hideous looking huge metal building where I'd have seen some highlight and some concerts. The Clash played there, so did Springsteen in the early 80s or the late 70s. Highlight came to Orlando in 1962. It'd be nice if there was a Basque restaurant, because Highlight is Basque. When I was 21 or 22, I rode around Europe with a married American couple. They were fighting the whole way. It was awkward. There were lots of good times despite this awkward situation. We camped out a few nights on the Basque coast on northern Spain. It wasn't a designated campsite. Some of the locals brought a bunch of fresh fish and lobsters. They made the best bouillabaisse I'd ever had. I got off the 102 to switch and noticed that the driver had switched the number to 103. He told me, oh yeah, it's the same bus. I asked why. I'm not sure. So I took the 103/102 to the train station. I was going to the train from Winter Park to Kissimmee. The train was scheduled to arrive in Winter Park a little after the hour. I stopped by Barney's for a snack and some coffee, and my girlfriend Kim met up with me. She brought a copy of the New York Times. After breakfast, Kim walked across the tracks with me. I lined up to board. She took photos. I kissed her goodbye. The train was about 20 minutes late. This is not uncommon with Amtrak. The train passed through Winter Park, downtown Orlando. The point of view gives the city a completely different look. We arrived in Orlando at the Orlando Amtrak station. The 1926 mission-style building that would look at home in Central America is one of my favorite buildings in Orlando. I got off the train for a few minutes and took some photos. I was walking inside to take photos of the beautiful wooden benches and wooden phone booths. One of the conductors told me not to go too far because we were leaving soon. So I got back in the train. A few minutes later, we pulled away. Warehouses, parking lots, vegetation, houses, fast food restaurants, and graffiti disappeared in our view. The landscape looked exotic at an accelerated pace. It felt like I was in a familiar place, but really traveling as the train arrived. I got off the train and walked toward Main Street. Looking to the right, I saw a large propane tank in the parking lot. Behind it, a large mural on the Main Street buildings on the side of Mackinson's hardware store. Across the street, I could see the restaurant on the corner that had a big sign in the window that said Latin food. I crossed the street and went to the Latin food place. Latin music was blaring. I could smell the food. It smelled so good. There was a table of kids that looked between 6 and 8, playing a game on their iPad. They were laughing and running around their table. I think one of the mothers was my server. She was attentive toward them, in between waiting on me. I felt like I was in Latin America, but I was in Kissimmee. When I was a kid, everyone referred to Kissimmee as cowboy country. That's with a K. Many still do. I walked from quaint Kissimmee downtown in the direction of the Surlago Hotel on US 192. I think I may have been about 10 miles from the hotel. I caught the bus 4 after walking about a mile, passing by yards that looked to be unaffected by zoning or neighborhood associations. I saw several in-progress construction projects. I hesitate to call them home improvements. Maybe that was the intent. I asked the bus driver if he passed by Fat Boy's Barbecue. He said yes. When the bus stopped a few blocks from where I got on, the driver said, "This is where you need to get off." He gave me specific directions. I walked a block farther than he had instructed. Finally, I pulled my phone out. The charge was low. I looked up Fat Boy's. It was about a mile the opposite way. I walked there. I saw a Chinese Dominican place. It looked a little seedy, even by my standards. I was walking down Earl of Bronson 192. This cookie cutter of ugliness, strip malls for miles, concrete almost everywhere with small patches of turf. I ended up getting something to eat at Fat Boy's. It was all right. There were pictures from the past few years of patrons. The names of some well-known cattle families were displayed on the wall. The decor, a predictable rustic clutter. A few buses later, I ended up at the Surlago. The buses are surprisingly nice. The bus stops are, for the most part, awful. When I was in Seattle 15 years ago, I don't remember seeing many stops that did not have schedules displayed at the stop. If you're riding the links without a smartphone, you will either have to wait or get lucky or run into someone in the know. There were no seats at most of the stops. My friend Brendan O'Connor stepped up with a tactical urbanist intervention and placed chairs at bus stops all over Orlando. The project is known as the SIT Project. A few years ago, I read Umberto Eco's Travels in Hyperreality. Eco talked about how the biggest offenders of creating a hyperreal place were the Sunbelt states, Florida, California, and Arizona. These are all the places with beautiful nature where people have built structures that seem to try to outdo nature. I thought about this as I walked at dusk through Old Town, listening to classic rock soundtrack that filled the streets. Funny thing is, Old Town seems like a fake version of downtown Kissimmee. I thought, why do tourists flock to this ersatz instead of the model? This environment has also co-opted classic rock. It's a genre that is irksome example of how corporate America has recontextualized something that might have been cool or subversive into something that's mostly safe or at least without meaning. After walking through Old Town, I walked to the hotel. It's almost next door. The whole area was pretty quiet. I wanted dinner. My options were chains. I had talked to Kim before Old Town. She said, half joking, "Go to Denny's, you get an AARP discount." Neither one of us would probably go under normal conditions. I ended up going. I got some sort of skillet. I went to Walgreens after and bought a composition book. I saw behind the counter there was the Lou Reed issue of the Rolling Stone. I bought it too. I haven't bought a Rolling Stone in years. I went back to the room and read the tearjerker piece that Laurie Anderson wrote about Lou. Then I read an essay by David Rakoff in a book I picked up at Park Ave CDs. It made me sad that Lou and David had passed away. In the morning, I ate the buffet at the hotel restaurant. It filled me through lunch. I spent several hours on buses en route to Lake Mary. As I walked back to the house, I thought about how I'd traveled a little over 8 hours and barely gone more than 100 miles. But it did give me time to read on the bus, just like I used to in Seattle.